Welcome to Leadership Kung Fu with your hosts, Sandi and Jennifer Long.
So welcome to another episode of Leadership Kung Fu, where we talk through real-life issues that we come across as coaches and consultants to a wide spectrum of organizations and industries. I'm Sandi Verrecchia of Satori Consulting in Toronto, and I'm here happily with my co-host Jen Long from Own Up in Colorado.
Hello, Sandi. Welcome to the beginning of fall, almost.
Yes, the early fall of August. So, Jen.
Yes, present. What are we talking about today, Sandi? What's our fancy topic that we decided would be a good thing for leaders?
We are talking today about why leadership teams stall and how to break the cycle. So why are leadership teams doing so much talking and not a lot of doing? And why is it frustrating for everyone?
Correct. And the big question is that sense of when you've been in the meeting with your team and you guys have all had a conversation and it feels like you're doing all the head shaking and you're all like, yeah, mm-hmm. And then nothing happens.
Yeah.
Or you've been in the meeting and you're doing all the talking and you're thinking, God, haven't we had this conversation before?
Mm-hmm. I'd be taking lots of notes.
Taking lots of notes.
Yeah, right?
Doing all the things.
And you leave, and what happens? You say to the person beside you, not in the meeting, but in the person beside you, what just happened? Why did we do this again? I thought we did the same thing last Thursday afternoon.
Right. We keep talking about the same stuff. What's our problem? Why can't we move forward? And so that is what we thought might be a really interesting topic to have today, to talk about why you get stalled, what creates that dynamic, and what you could do about it to get things going.
So in true Kung Fu fashion, we really like to liken our topic back to the topic of Kung Fu and how we tie it to leadership. And so I was thinking about that today as we were thinking about our topic. And I was thinking about it from the sense of a dojo, and a dojo that's filled with words and philosophy. So all over the walls, it's really pretty, but with no practice, it'll stay empty of mastery. And I think really that's what we're talking about, right? As leadership and Kung Fu, wisdom is only proven through motion. And too many teams today are like in endless discussion, mistaking talk for progress. But in the end, Kung Fu and leadership are both about doing. And so what do we need to do to get out of this cycle?
That's right. What kind of action are we taking? It's all about the action. So let's to get into it, let's talk about what is happening now that creates the kind of dynamic. Let's break it down. What's really going on for people that is creating a stall, that we're finding ourselves having the same conversations and not really moving the dime.
Yeah. Well, I think fear of conflict is one that comes up for me. I do a lot of new leadership development, and that's always a good one where they don't want to be the one that steps out of bounds. They don't want to say something that isn't maybe going to take it in the right way. So fear of kind of upheaving the apple cart in a meeting that is somebody needs to take a stand, but they're not willing to do it. Right.
Well, right. So feeling safe to say, I feel like we talked about this a million times. Why aren't we doing anything? Right. Feeling safe to call it out is part of the issue. Right. That whole sense of I'm not going to be the one.
Yeah.
Right. I think the other part is, and this is it, too many priorities, right? And I always make the joke about priorities should not be a plural word. It shouldn't come in plural. It should only be singular so that we're not conflicting with our priority. But that whole, if we've got multiple things that are important and who's got what, right? And what's more important and what are we really acting on? Or do we just leave the meeting and act on the thing that we think is important?
Yeah. So, I agree that I think I hadn't heard you say that, but, priorities probably should be singular, but you can have competing priorities, but you really need to say, we have these things we need to do. They don't necessarily have to compete with one another, but you need to have some sort of way of putting them in some sort of priority where we know that this is really what we're going to be focusing on now.
Right. So this first, then that.
Yeah. Not the scope creep of, and that, right? And that, and that, and more, which leads to fatigue, right? People are
Right.
tired.
People are super tired. They've got whiplash. Are we working from the office? Are we going back in? Are we going to, do we still get to be hybrid? Like they're exhausted from the last, 3 or 4 years of coming out of COVID, coming into a different environment in the US, right? Where we're having tariffs. We're not having tariffs. We're going to have funding. We're not going to have funding.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot going on that is creating fatigue around adaptability, changing. What are we doing? Right. So I think that overload is definitely also part of what creates some of this stuff. And not to mention, just the idea of AI right now is creating a lot of what are we doing with that kind of pressure, and how important is that, and what does that really offer, and does it really work, and should we be first in, or is it really a bubble?
Right. And will it take over for our jobs? Because then it goes, back to the fear aspect. And, there's all the conversations around AI. It's such a big, big topic right now. Absolutely.
Right.
And I think, that the other one was that whole, when people start confusing alignment with accountability. So just because you agree with something, it doesn't lend itself just for accountability, which means somebody's going to do something with something, right?
Agreement is not commitment.
It is not.
Accountability is a practice of clarity. And if you're not leaving with who's doing what by when and who owns decisions, you're not clear.
Yeah.
There is no
There's
accountability.
A couple of Harvard researchers, Jeffrey Pfeffer and Robert Sutton, and they sort of call this talking a lot the knowing doing gap. And what in their research, they found that organizations confuse talking about change and doing with actually making the change happen. And so it's just that, good, leaders that are really good need to see progress happening, and discussion, although it might be great discussion, is not moving the owner or the needle. So back to your point about accountability, is that somebody needs to take ownership to have something shift.
Right. And having strategy and having the strategic meetings is not progress, right? That's just the okay, now we understand how we're going to approach it.
Yeah. You need to have them. Like, I don't think we're either of us
critical.
are saying, you need to talk about the stuff, but not ad nauseum and not without forward action.
Right. And this is common, right? We can think we've ended up on strategy, and then we don't get to execution. We don't get to meaningful execution in the kind of timeframes we're actually looking for. And that, I think, is what the big stall is about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right. So what can we do? What can we do to move the needle? What can we do to get people off the dime and stop the stall?
Well,
this is the question.
I think, acknowledging it. Right.
We got to recognize we're there. Right.
Yeah. This is where we're at, and we need to do something. So there's, taking some controls, taking some accountability, calling it what it is. I think that's really important. Is probably the first thing you need to do when you're stalled.
Yes. And I like the idea of changing the conversation, right? So if you're in the do loop, change the conversation. And I really, really like this idea of the one hard question, right? That when you're in the room and you're in this space, right? And if it's about, right, if you're sensing we're stalled because we're not making a decision, then to ask the question, what's the decision we're avoiding right now?
And it's an interesting question, and I love that question. But you've got to have, not have fear in order to say it. That's inappropriate what I was going to say. But
you're gonna have to get courageous, right? But I think standing in your values, right? This is that moment when see something, say something. This feels like we're doing this again, and you have to stand in your own accountability to say, I own the fact that we need to progress, and I don't feel like we are, so I'm going to call it out. I'm going to say, I'm responsible as a leader on this team to make sure we're moving forward. And if I'm frustrated, it doesn't help anyone for me to have a conversation, to have a meeting after the meeting with the people I actually do trust or feel safe with, to say, I can't believe we can't get anything done.
Yeah.
That's the thing you should bring to the meeting to say, what are the decisions we're avoiding, right? If it's about conflict, right? What is this disagreement we're dancing around? Who here disagrees but hasn't said it yet? These are the hard questions.
Yeah, but I want to clarify what somebody just said, because I think I heard you correctly, but you said as a leader coming to the meeting, you're not suggesting that this has to be done by the leader of the group or whoever sort of the
No.
pseudo leader is,
If
right?
you're on the
If
leadership
you're
team, if
all
you're
in
a
the leader.
member,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm going to say it doesn't even have to be that. It can be a non-intact team of non-leaders that have sort of influence, a sphere of influence over one another, that this applies to as well, right? Because
Right.
it's not all high SLT meetings or ELT meetings that this is happening in. If it's happening in those meetings, it's likely happening all over the place.
Right. Who owns the decision? Well, we can't do anything about it because we're not allowed to make that call. And so
Yeah.
do we just drop and wait for the next week's meeting and have the same conversation again?
Yeah, or there's a hierarchy and I'm not, I'm at this not the same level as everybody else, and therefore I can't, right? And I think that's just a terrible way for people to think.
Well, yeah. And I think sometimes even though you do have decision-making authority and you are running something, and if you've got somebody in there who's higher than you, director level, VP level, president level, right? You got somebody in there. Are you deferring to them? Are you waiting for them to make a decision? Are you aware that you're doing that?
Yeah.
When they're looking for you as a leadership team to say, here's the decision I think we should make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And step into your power and show everybody in the room the leader that you can be and that you are, right? And you're not doing that by waiting.
Right. And if you think you're waiting, that's an accountability thing. Who owns this? If you don't think it's you, who might?
does?
I don't feel like I own this. I feel like, Bill, you own this. I mean, that getting clear on if it's not a group decision, right? Because that's consensus. We're just looking for somebody to say, I've got the decision on this. Thanks for all your input. Right? Who's got that? And I love the question, especially when it comes to accountability stalls, is if this fails, who's responsible for learning from it? Right? Who's gonna own the hot wash on it if it goes south?
Yeah.
If we're not clear on who owns it.
Exactly. So is it team effort or not? Right. Because
Right.
when things go south, it's always looking to one.
Right.
I think even before we get there, Jen, one of the easier things that people can do in terms of a practice and ensuring that agenda items have timelines and clear expectations on what's going to happen. This is a decision point. This is an FYI. This is a whatever it might be, so that you're not ending up in this infinite loop of not making decisions when a decision needs to be made.
Right. And this kind of goes back to those models that we all know, like the RACI model, right? Who's informed, who's accountable, who's responsible, and not to abuse that thing, right? And I think that, people who are informed like to be thought of as responsible or accountable. And like, how do you
Delineate,
understand what your role is based on the item, right? And that's also part of the clarity, right? Is if we are going to move forward and execute, what part are you playing in an execution? Are you responsible? Are you accountable? Are you just there to be informed, right? And those are the things that we've got the models on, but we continually either don't use them or misuse them.
Yeah. When you're thinking about that whole role clarity, because that comes up a lot in the organizations I work with. I'm not really sure why, but so I came up with this construct. Maybe I don't know if I came up with it. It's in my head. The other day, where there's two distinct teams that overlap a lot, and there are different sites, and so it became this: who do I report to? Who needs to know? And rather than sort of gelling where they're on site together, it would be, no, my team's over here, and then we're not going to work with you directly. And I came up with this, and they're struggling. So I came up with this construct of team one, team two. So, team one, when you're working all together in the same site, and team two is that who else needs to be informed who's not in the immediate team, to help them understand that, that you're on different teams at different times. And at different times, you're going to have to let people know. But this whole, it's finally struck a chord. Like, yeah, when I'm on site, team one, everybody there, even though we're not an intact team. And then team two is the people that I still need to keep informed because they are my actual team. And so something like that in terms of who owns things and the discussions that you're having might be, help understanding. People understand like who is accountable, who owns what's your role in all of this.
Right. And to take the time to do that, because I think notionally we all understand we play different roles on different teams in different projects. I play this role on this thing, and to hold that thread through your strategy, right? To hold that as you get into execution, how does that modify? Because you may be a stakeholder on multiple things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how are your needs as a stakeholder being met? And how are those discussions happening between teams, right? Teams of teams and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which means you have to be super fluid, right? In the ability to sort of work on those different ones.
In this conversation around teams of teams, right? That you always hold the role of calling it out when you feel the team is stalled, when you feel you are stuck in a place that you're not making forward movement, that you're not really bringing execution at the level your team needs to bring it, that you are responsible to call it out. That role never goes away. That's just being a responsible, accountable team player.
Absolutely. Full stop on that one.
Yeah.
The other, there's the 6 hat thinkings, Edward de Bono's. Do you ever use that in your things? Right? It's old. It's
old, but it's valid.
It is, right? And so you have to go through all 6 hats. And so anybody doesn't know, it's just this way of, everybody has to wear a particular color at any particular time. So they may all have to wear a black hat, which is like, what are the risks and what are the things that could go wrong and all this stuff. And then, what is the green hat? Let's get into our creativity zone. And what else is possible, and that sort of thing. It is a good framework for somebody to argue something that may not work. Because if you're already in agreement, and it's likely because one person spoke and everybody's like yes, then it's really what a great role in a team to say, yeah, but what if? What might we think about? What are the risks? What are the bad things? And that's not being a negative Nelly.
No, it's what I love about the 6 hats and the use of that and being intentional about it is it forces you to think about your thinking. It forces you to recognize, where are we in groupthink? Where are we in our bias? Where are we because we run into that cultural norm and we no longer are aware of the thinking that we're actually doing and how we're doing it. And so things like being contrarian, right? Let's talk about failure. Let's court failure. Let's act like this whole thing is going to fail and what's going to drive that failure, right? And to be able to use those conversations to bolster your thinking and spur action, right? In a way that you haven't been able to.
Yeah. And so that's a really good way of just making sure that everybody's looking at things. People are, and again, the idea of what won't work is another way of getting people to think differently. So
because I mean, lack of clarity is some of the things you'll hear about why teams are stuck. Well, we're not clear. Well, all right, let's get clear. let's walk through it through all the ways we're thinking about it, right? So that's why that's a great tool to get you unstuck, right?
Yeah. I think another practical kung fu move in this would be to ensure that your meetings aren't really, really long. Right? Timeboxing is so important. I remember having a team saying, "Oh, we would get together every Monday, and it'd be an hour and a half," and they would say, "But we did get nothing done." And I said, "Well, okay, your meetings are now going to be 15 minutes standing up in the hallway, boom, 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 right?" And it just when you don't have the luxury of time,
right,
things change.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And cadence, right? Just in and of itself. What are your cadences? How often are you meeting, right? If you're doing quarterly strategy things and you're like, we keep talking about the same thing, maybe quarterly is a bad idea.
Yes.
Maybe you got to ramp that up, and it's got to be a lot more frequent until you've moved, see visible movement and momentum. Right. I love the whole idea of habits and rituals around the meetings itself, right? So if you're going to shift into a place of we've got to demonstrate momentum, how are we doing momentum? How are you checking that, right?
Like team norms, is that sort of what you're thinking of?
Kind of team norms. It's like what
the way
what do
work?
we need to practice together that's going to embed this idea of what did we do? And if we haven't done anything, then we're not answering that question at the end of the meeting. We've obviously got it wrong. But that whole what decisions did we make? So that you understand what decisions got done, right? Who owns the things that we're walking away with. And I think a lot of teams are good at who's got the action. Who's got the action, right? But who has the action and who's got the decision rights for the next thing, right? Is a good one.
And what's the time box around that, right? So yeah, what do you need to do? But what's the expectation around that? You know,
the deadline.
What's your capacity, and you know what's realistic. So I think there's that piece of it as well. It's like tie it up with a bow, right?
Right, and if right, so in accountability, because this is an accountability practice. Essentially, what it says is, did we get stuff done, and are we clear on what we're doing next, and when is that going to happen? And if you're not creating the expectations for yourselves as a team, you're not going to deliver against them, because that's where you give yourself permission to stay stuck because you don't deadline. Right. And when people are like, we need to have more discussion on it. That's where the hard questions come in. Right. How much more information is going to make a difference?
Right. I don't think I've ever heard anybody ask that in a meeting, but but it's a good one.
There's a lot of people who when they get in the weeds, or they're risk averse, or whatever the people are holding on to, like, I just need a little bit more information, and I think we need to meet about it. And no, right? Those are the things you have to start to watch for. Is more information isn't going to change your ability to make a good decision.
Yeah, or at least ask. Will more information change our ability to make the decision, or change the decision, or because I think there's that, you know, that 80-20 rule, or I like to say with on my clients, the 100-120 rule, where people are working at 120% of accuracy and intention, yet 100% would give them the exact same outcome. But they're putting that much more 20% into everything, which is noble and great. But at what cost?
But if you're looking to create momentum, right? If you're looking to get off the dime, that's the stuff you have to really be careful of, because those are slippery slope agreements to give people more room to drag the conversation out longer, right? To say, okay, look, you've seen anything. What else do you need to see? And how's that going to impact?
Yeah.
For sure.
So there's lots of ways, I think, that we can like, there's lots of so many little tips and tricks, right? But I think, you know, the bottom line of it is people need to be courageous to step up and ask the questions. They need to be willing to suggest that maybe we need to do things differently.
100%, right? Don't be afraid of the hard questions, because those are the things that hold people up, that break the thinking patterns, break the cadence of the room, break the monotony of the stall.
Yeah.
That's the hammer on the ice.
And I think, you know, anybody who's listening, if you're in a meeting and you're feeling like, oh my God, kill me now, and we're doing this again, somebody else in that room is thinking the exact same thing. It's just like not asking a question because you think it's a stupid question.
Right. And if you are the resident contrarian, right, who else can you lean on in the room, right? Because a lot of people, if you're the resident contrarian and you're the only one who ever says, this feels like we're stuck.
Yeah.
Right? People have stopped listening to you. So figure out who else in the room. And I'm just pointing that out because I do feel that some people own that responsibility in a way, and then people will stay stalled because that person is just the naysayer. And that's how they're seen.
And that's how they're seen. And that's the picture that's painted. So it's always, oh, there's Peter again with that negativity. So you're right. Sort of enlisting other people to play your part is a good tip there, I think. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because if you're the resident devil's advocate, people will diminish your impact, especially if they're the stall and the confusion and the clarity and all the things. It's not going to work in your best interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So hopefully we've given you some good ideas on how to get out of the mud, get out of the stall, and get your team to move forward. Any other parting wisdom we can offer in this case?
I don't know if there's parting wisdom, but I'd love to hear more from our listeners about, what's happening in their meetings. What are some other things that we might want to talk about? Or suggestions on what happens when they're in the stall so that we can learn from you as well. Like, I think, the more we get that.
Yeah. If you've managed to overcome one and we didn't talk about what was a great thing that you did, we would love to know what that is. And everyone else would too. So tell us all.
Yeah.
So we can all learn from each other, because I think this is a common place for many teams. And it feels really, really good when you can get out of it. So there you go.
Yeah. So, I think a strong quality in leaders around us is the ability to prove that you can move. And so, all of you leaders out there, prove that you can move, stop talking. And that proof is in the pudding, right? Start to make things happen.
Get clear on the agreements, get clear on the actions, get clear on who owns the decisions. Yeah. All right. Well, great. Well, then thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Thanks for listening and downloading. If you like this episode and you would like to share it with someone who feels stuck, please do. We appreciate any of that. And we will talk to you on the next podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening. You can check out Sandi's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI Consulting INC.ca. And you can check out Jen's website at accountabilityatwork.com. If you like what you hear, let us know by leaving a review on your favorite listening platform. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.